Hi, I'm Brian Jordan, and you're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
So I got a call that said, this is Susan Bailey. And I said, yeah, but I'm sorry, I don't know a Susan Bailey. She goes, I'm Henry Aaron's secretary. And I went, yeah. She goes, Henry would like to talk to you. I said, yeah, okay. And he said, how would you like to fly down to Sarasota and look at our pictures? And I said, I would love to. He said, well, when can you do it? Jokingly, I said, tomorrow. He goes, okay, we'll take care of that. I'll meet you at the airport in Atlanta. Susan will have the arrangements. And then I get on a plane with Hank Aaron and fly down to Sarasota. He offers me a job, and I said, well, what team do you want me to manage? He goes, no, he wants you to be a pitching coach.
Hi, this is Phil Necro. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Most guys throw it this way. The ball back in here, hands come around, and these two fingers come into the ball. And stiff wristed, no follow throw, and just a little up and goes in the bat. I hope there's no rotation on. The ball comes in there and doesn't bother. It doesn't never do the same thing twice.
This is Kyle Wright, and you're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
One of my favorite moments for your career as of right now is actually this past week. It was a show of confidence by Brian Snicker. He left you in the game after bases were loaded. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was really cool. I went back and I saw that clip on Instagram several times. I'll be honest, I went back and I watched it numerous times. Kind of gave me chills a little bit. It was just really cool. I was kind of lost my command a little bit there. Still made some good pitches, but was definitely getting a little tired. So whenever he said, basically left me in the game, I feel like that kind of gave me what I needed to get me over the hump to make a good pitch, get a ground ball back to me, and get out of that inning.
This is Matt Olson. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond. Yeah, it's a pretty cool experience. Not everybody gets this opportunity to kind of set up their roots and be somewhere long term that they grew up and have family and friends. So it happened pretty quick there in spring training, and it was just an opportunity that my wife and I and my family thought that we couldn't pass up, so just jumped on it, and it's been a blast.
Says, Chief, why don't you race Ralph Garr? I said, okay. Said, Ralph Garr wants to race you too. So we started on the first base line on the outfield line. We started, bam, took off running. I beat him by 3 foot.
Mike Never's here. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
I'm Kelsey Wingert, and you're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Hey, this is Andrew Jones. You're watching On Deck with Tyler.
Fans, you're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Welcome into On Deck. I'm Tyler Redmond. As always, thank you so much for checking out the channel. I do appreciate it. While you're here, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck, and of course with the Atlanta Braves. You can also find me on social media, Twitter and Instagram with that tag over there, and of course you can always shop On Deck using that QR code on your right. Now, I want to talk today, of course, about the opening day roster. We're going to talk about that in just a second, as well as Mike Soroka, as well as Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake. We have a lot to talk about today as we're coming to the end of spring training and the beginning of the regular season. But before we do that, I do want to let you guys know that there are 3 videos on the channel that you should go check out right now, and they are interviews with first and second round picks. Number 1, second round pick Cole Phillips. You guys have gotten to know him well. We've done multiple interviews with Cole. A late one from spring training is now on the channel with him. One with Owen Murphy, first round draft pick. He was the 20th overall pick for the Braves. That one is on the channel as well. And of course, the latest one, J.R. Ritchie, another first round draft pick, 35th overall. Great interview as well. All those are on the channel, so I'd really recommend go check those out. Get to know these guys, as they very well could be the future of the Atlanta Braves. Now, let's jump into what we, of course, are talking about today. Spring training, we're in week 4. More roster cuts have happened, and which means we kind of know where the team's going. The roster cuts since last time we saw each other were these. Vaughn Grissom has been optioned to AAA, along with Braden Shoemake, optioned to AAA. Eli White has been optioned to AAA Gwinnett. Nick Anderson as well, and Jackson Stevens was sent outright to AAA. Now, the bottom 3 were, some people were surprised by that, but I think the real story here is obviously the first 2, because all spring training long, we've thought that those 2 guys, both Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake, were the top 2 candidates for the shortstop position after Dansby Swanson leaves for Chicago. That's what was assumed last time we talked to each other. I don't even know if Braden Shoemake was a legitimate candidate for that job, but he had proven himself for the first 3 weeks of spring training defensively to say, hey, this guy needs to be looked at too. I thought today we were going to be talking about, hey, Braden Shoemake has really made himself a candidate in this spot because, they're 2 ends. They're 2 ends of the spectrum. One is a great defensive player, and Braden Shoemake, probably the best out of the 3 guys that are vying for that job. And Vaughn Grissom, of course, is proven much more offensively in that case. So they're 2 very different ends of the spectrum, 2 opposite sides of the coin there, but they're both very deserving as well. So interesting turn of events here as they both get optioned, and that, of course, leads us with who is the candidate? Well, the Braves left no time for us to wonder. It is Orlando Arcia. And Orlando Arcia, look, a lot of people did not give him a chance in this competition. I said from the beginning that I thought this guy had a chance, and he obviously does, as he will be the opening day starting shortstop for the Atlanta Braves. Now, that does not mean he will be the starting shortstop for the Atlanta Braves come postseason time. That does not mean that he will have the most time played there, but he will be the opening day shortstop. And a lot of people are left wondering, hey, is this a Vaughn Grissom problem? Is this a Braden Shoemake problem? Or what's the deal here? I don't think either one of those are accurate. I don't think that either one of these guys are problems. But you'd be selling yourself short if you thought that Vaughn Grissom was ready to go. I mean, he had a great rookie campaign last year, but he also fell off towards the end. I think we all remember that. But, it's tough to just say this guy's ready to go when the stats don't necessarily show it. He's had a good spring training, but the defense has lacked. And I think we all can agree with that. Braden Shoemake, on the other hand, his bat has come to life, but his glove has always been there, right? That was never a problem. He's had a good few weeks, but I don't think the Braves feel necessarily comfortable giving these guys the job, either one of them, until one of them proves to have both components locked down, offense and defense. Orlando Arcia is both of those. He is a great two-way player, and I think he was very overlooked in this discussion. Orlando Arcia was the starting shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers. I know a lot of you know that, but he was looked at as a guy that could be the long-time Brewers starting shortstop. He was not a stopgap for the Milwaukee Brewers, and I think we all need to realize that. But it's also, concerning to me that there's a lot of guys out there that overlooked him because, again, Orlando Arcia is a good player. He's been a great player for the Braves off the bench for the past couple of years, but he's also a guy that I think can produce every day in the lineup. Now, that does not mean he will for the Braves. That does not mean that is the long-term plan. I personally don't necessarily think that's the case, especially after listening to Alex Anthopoulos today and earlier this week. I don't think that's the case. I think the real goal here is to send Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake down to Gwinnett, give them both 4 at-bats a game, and kind of see who comes out the better there. Now, that doesn't mean that only one of them is going to come out of that. Depth is always a good problem to have, but I don't think this is just a, we're giving Orlando the job and we'll see what happens. No, I think they're going to keep an eye on all 3 of these guys. And look, there is the possibility that none of these guys are the right, guy for the job. This could be a 1 or 2 year competition where we eventually see, Orlando Arcia and Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake have been the Braves went elsewhere. I don't think that's going to happen. You have too much talent at one position there. But there is a void. Make no mistake, the Braves are looking to fill that void that Dansby Swanson left behind. But I also don't necessarily believe that it's settled yet. I don't think Orlando Arcia being named the opening day starting shortstop is the final straw. Now, that being said, I think we can take from that what you will. I'll, of course, read your comments here in a few minutes, so make sure to get them in. And also remember, Super Chats do help you. But I wanted to take all of what's happened this week, all of the roster cuts, really the final roster cut before we really know what the team's going to be on opening day. Before we see that, let's go ahead and predict what it's going to be and kind of analyze it and go through it. So with that being said, we're going to do that right now. And of course, again, make sure to like this video. It does help us out a ton, and I really would appreciate it. So let's, of course, you got 26-man roster. We're going to start with the starting pitching. Here you go. Starting pitching for opening day, Max Fried, Kyle Wright, Spencer Strider, Charlie Morton. And that fifth spot is still being competed over, but we know the two guys that are competing for it. It is no longer a question of whether or not, it's no longer within, more than two people. Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster, who have both been phenomenal throughout spring training. They both have an equal chance at this. I couldn't bank a pick here. And, you can discuss it in the comments all you want, but there is no real leader here. It's kind of whoever the Braves feel most comfortable with. And that, is yet to be seen. They've both been great. And, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them both contribute in 2023 at some point. Maybe not even early in the season, but I think they're both legit, contenders to again, participate on the starting rotation at some point. Now, that does not overlook Mike Soroka, who, of course, made an appearance today. I don't think that'll be in the early part of the season. Also not overlooking Bryce Elder and Ian Anderson, even though they are, not quite ready to go. They could contribute later in the year, especially pending injury and that kind of thing. Anything can happen. The roster is going to change on a rapid pace once the season starts. So this is just for the starting rotation on day one. And the other thing to realize here is that Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster, or Dylan Dodd or Jared Schuster, whichever it may be, they may not make the roster on opening day. And I want you to realize that, because a lot of people are overlooking that. These guys are non-active, they're non-roster, participants in spring training. They can get called up at any point. So it may not be on opening day, but it may be day 4 of the season when Dylan Dodd gets the call or Jared Schuster gets the call. So I want you to realize that it's not necessarily just opening day. The roster that I'm presenting to you, I think the majority of, we're looking at more so the early part of the season, some, of course, throughout the entire season. But the real crux of it is this is what you're going to see in the early part of 2023, the first month or two. That's what I think we're looking at right here. So these are your starters. I think at least the top 4 will be on there for the most of the season, again, pending injury. But Dylan Dodd, Jared Schuster is going to be your 5th starter. Whoever comes out the victor of that will be your 5th starter moving forward. Now, moving on to the bullpen, this gets pretty interesting. This is what I think your opening day bullpen looks like. Raisel Iglesias is the closing pitcher. There's nobody else that I think is even touching that right now. You got 3 lefties in there, but according to myself, this is what I think it's going to be. You got A.J. Minter, Dylan Lee, and Lucas Leckie. I apologize. Again, 3 lefties there: A.J. Minter, Dylan Lee, and Lucas Leckie. A.J. Minter's your obvious guy that could be A.J. could be the face of this rotation. If not this year, then in the future. He's really, grown in some strides over the past few years. He's really become, one of the guys that we can count on the most. I think Dylan Lee is a guy that we've learned to count on more in recent years. He's a guy that I think could be lights out. He's got the talent. We'll have to see how it goes. But your righties, you got a few of them. Joe Jimenez, of course, we picked him off in the offseason. I don't think there's any chance he doesn't make this bullpen. Nick Anderson was one of those optioned the other day, but he does have, options to play with. I think Nick Anderson will be in the rotation. Jesse Chavez, a lot of people are going to turn away from that and ask me why. Jesse Chavez has been a guy over the past, few years that has been nothing if not reliable out of the pen for long relief. And being that Jackson Stevens got optioned the other day, you don't have another guy in the pen that can give you a ton of long relief. Jesse Chavez can go out there for 3 innings if you need him to on any given day. That's why Jesse Chavez is in there for me, not to mention the clubhouse atmosphere that he provides and contributes to. He's a leader. I think the Braves are going to put him in. I would be surprised if they did not put him in. Colin McHugh is another one that I think will make it. I think he's obvious. And Kirby Yates. Kirby Yates, we've yet to really see break out in a Braves uniform, but I do think he will relatively soon. I think Kirby Yates is a guy that, obviously has the potential to be a contributing factor in the pen. He's a guy that I think could catch a lot of attention this year and surprise some folks with how well he does. So he's one to keep an eye on, but that is your bullpen. Position players. This is one that I really want you to pay attention to because, look, we know the majority of these guys, where they're going to be, where they're going to play, that kind of thing. But there were some unsettled, differences. And, you look at it, obviously, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, your catchers, Ronald Acuna, Michael Harris, those guys are all locked in, ready to go. We know what they're going to be. The questions really, have kind of been answered here. Orlando Arcia is your shortstop, right? We know that. Eddie Rosario is kind of the last man standing for left field. I debated whether or not Marcelo Ozuna would play left, depending on bat. But Eddie Rosario's had a great World Baseball Classic. Marcelo Ozuna has actually been hitting in spring training, which is a positive thing to see, and we shouldn't go without noticing that. But it's something to keep an eye on as well. Your utility. So that's predicting the opening day roster. Hope you enjoyed it. From here, this is where we're going to go. We're going to talk about Mike Soroka. Mike Soroka, we've done a lot of talking about. I followed his journey pretty closely. A few years ago, I drove up and watched him in Rome in his first game back after the multiple Achilles tears. He's a guy that I think, if healthy, could really be a boost to the Braves, could potentially be one of the starters, if not this year, next. But just the fact that he's pitching again is great. He did pitch today in spring training. He threw 1 1/3. He gave up 3 hits and 2 runs. But if you ask anybody that watched the game, defense kind of failed him. I actually spoke to Soroka a couple weeks ago when I was down at spring training. I talked to him about his recovery. I talked to him about his goals for 2023 and all that. Any question you'd want to ask Soroka, I asked him. That video is on the channel. I posted earlier. You're more welcome to go check it out. Would really appreciate you go checking it out. It is on the channel homepage. Again, Mike Soroka interview is out there right now, so just be aware of that. But here's how I feel about Mike Soroka. If you give Mike Soroka 3 weeks to get right and because now nothing's in the way. You give him spring training, I think he really could perform this year. He might come out of the pen. He may do a number of things, but I definitely think that it's a situation where you don't want to push too hard, but it's also a situation where he could very well perform this year. He's obviously healthy. His arm's good. His hamstring's healthy again. The Achilles is healed, but I think he can contribute. And you give him a few weeks. It's not going to be the early part of the season. He's not going to make the opening day roster. he could very well contribute at some point this season. And a lot of people are kind of overlooking that. That is huge for a guy that hasn't played in 2 seasons. It's huge. And I think that, a lot of people are, not necessarily paying enough attention to it. So it'd be very interesting to me to see, what happens with that. And, of course, we're going to follow that as long as we can. But I think a lot of people are overlooking Mike Soroka. And I hope you're not. Keep an eye on him. I think he very well could be back sooner rather than later. I think give him a couple of months, maybe the All-Star break. It'd be very interesting to see where he is then compared to now. But we'll, of course, keep you followed on that too. And we're going to open it up to questions here in just a second. But again, really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Really appreciate you guys being a part of the On Deck followers and that kind of thing. You guys have helped me grow a ton during spring training. You guys have really checked out the shop and have subscribed a lot. And I know you're telling your friends about it too, so we really appreciate that, though. Remember to like the video. Really would appreciate that. That is how we grow. That is how the videos get out there. It really does help me out a ton when you like the video. And, of course, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything we got going on here on Deck. And, of course, all around Braves country. And, again, remember to check out the On Deck shop. There's all kinds of products on there, including T-shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, pennants, all kinds of things. Anything that you could want with an On Deck logo is pretty much on there. Really would appreciate you guys checking that out and, of course, supporting the channel. That being said, let's get into your questions. Let's talk about what you want to talk about. Let's see. A lot of people are talking about Mike Soroka, who we just finished discussing. Mike Soroka did look pretty good today. Again, defense kind of failed him, but it's a huge step. Just for him to be on a mound in a major league capacity, it was a huge step. Yeah, he's touching 96, and like Nicholas says, for a guy who's had as many problems as he had, touching 96 is obviously a good thing. Let's see. Joe Reese says, Mike Soroka looked good today. He should get one more start this spring. If he's good or better than today, I think he gets to the majors sooner than later. He just had bad defense today. Yeah, that's kind of, my takeaway from it too. But we'll see. We will see. I think Michael Soroka could very well impact this season. And, all we can do is, wait and, find out. But that's all we can really do. Thank you for the correction on Michael there. I'm sorry. I've forced myself to say Michael I don't know how many times over the past few weeks because I'm so used to saying Mike Soroka. Probably because of that video that had it, put together with my Sharona. But, it is Michael Soroka. If you don't know, you know now. He goes by Michael Soroka. Ronnie, do you think the pitch clock will slow Chavez down? That's a good question. If you don't know, Ben Ingram said last year at one point on the radio, I was listening, and he said something to the effect of Jesse Chavez pitches like he's double parked outside. He just pitches very fast. So, yeah, I think the pitch clock very well could slow him down. And that's the other thing. I'm glad you brought that up. There's been an update on the rules, the updated rules. They have a new update. So I think we need to go through it real quick. One being the pitch clock. It's small changes. It's nothing notable, nothing huge, but I will address it. It's again, basically saying that if a pitcher is involved in the play, they will add a few seconds. So 15 seconds when the base is empty, 20 seconds with runner on base. The hitter needs to be alert with 8 seconds remaining. But if the pitcher is involved in the play, whether he throws the batter out or whatever the case may be, they will give an extra few seconds. I think that's, I will actually credit MLB on that for being aware of that and actually making that change. They're adapting. Whether you like the pitch clock or not, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but they are trying to make it better. They are trying to adapt it. I'm hoping that continues because it's not the worst thing in the world. Some people love it. Some people hate it. But I do think that, there is some instances where I don't think a pitch clock is necessary. Number one being the postseason. And if you've watched the World Baseball Classic, You know this as well as I do. They didn't have a pitch clock. There was no pitch clock enacted in the World Baseball Classic, and it was some of the most entertaining baseball ever, some of the most watched baseball in recent memory. And, for multiple reasons, it's the World Baseball Classic, but it's high stakes. The postseason is nothing if not high stakes and nothing if not, viewership friendly. I definitely think that the postseason doesn't need the pitch clock. Some people may disagree with that, but I think the postseason could go without it, and, I hope that happens. But, we'll see. But, yeah, they are adapting the pitch clock, and I think that's a good thing. But, we'll see where they go from here. Let's see. Matthew Brenningham. Oh, okay. Michael Sheffield says he's got faith in Rosario. I have had faith in Rosario for quite a while. Eddie Rosario was my pick out of all the guys that got, signed to the Braves on one-year deals from the World Series team. He was the one guy I wanted back, and that has not changed. I would have loved to have gotten Jock. I would have loved to have kept Soler. But Eddie Rosario, if I had one to choose, it would be Eddie Rosario. Because of the consistency he had in the postseason, because of what I think he could do across 162 when healthy. We know what happened last year. It was legit eye troubles. I do believe that. I think Eddie Rosario could very well, be a huge factor in 2023 for the Braves for them to be successful. But we got to see. Again, I think he hit 2 homers in the World Baseball Classic. I, was kind of hoping to myself that maybe going and doing the WBC would unlock something in Eddie Rosario. We'll have to wait and see on that. I hope that when he comes in, it's new life, it's new blood, and we're playing with same for Acuna. Right? I hope both of those guys are energized at the start of the season and are able to carry that through the end. I think Eddie, gets a lot of flack. And, for people that had higher expectations, probably like myself, that wanted him to be so good for 162, not just the 3 weeks in the postseason. But, we'll see. I think what he did in the WBC showed he can still hit, and, we'll see how he plays. But I think the WBC is a better indication of what he can do than spring training would have ever been. I mean, you're talking about, the difference of, just playing around, and I say this, relatively, playing around in spring training and getting your skills back to legit playing postseason baseball in March. I mean, it's a huge difference. So we'll see. Michael says the way he finished last year, his WBC and his career averages, the guy is probably going to outperform his career averages after the eye surgery. I certainly hope so. Again, Eddie was the guy I wanted. I think Eddie can figure it out. I definitely think that he would be my pick for most improved from last year to this year if I had to guess right now. That would be the guy that I would select. And that's even considering Marcell Ozuna. I think Eddie would be the guy that I would expect to, want to come back and have a better year. It's also a contract year. I'm not saying that affects anything, but it does. It's a contract year. He's got to have a good year this year for him to get the salary he wants going forward. It's just something to keep an eye on. It'll be interesting to see if he stays in Atlanta after that. But that's a conversation for a later date. Nicholas says, I'm curious what Ozuna is going to do. So far in spring training, he's looked really solid, but can he continue to do so? Marcell Ozuna is an interesting player. He sometimes is the greatest player you feel like you've ever seen at the plate, and other times, he's not as locked in. And I think a lot of people forget, how far he's fallen, because Marcell Ozuna, not that long ago was in the MVP conversation alongside Freddie Freeman. So we'll see. I think Marcell Ozuna could be a very good player again. If he can get back to what he was in 2020, even 2019, I think that would be great. He's not necessarily on a contract year. I believe he's got one more with Atlanta. But I think that if he can have a good year this year and get the bad taste out of everybody's mouth of what he's done in the past and all the off-the-field stuff, his stats over the past couple of years, if he can just have a good start and get off rolling, I think Marcell Ozuna could be, very good this year. I think he could change a lot of minds and change a lot of opinions about him. But, he's got to do it. Spring training is not the regular season. He's had a pretty good spring training. I haven't looked at the stats lately, but I know they're good. I think he's hit 3 homers. He's done well. His average is looking better than before. But again, it's a small sample size. He had a good start to the season last year, and then, he never really got back to what he was supposed to be according to his numbers before. We'll see. But this is a guy who, if he gets hot at the right time, can carry a team for 60 games. We've seen him do that. That's a third of the season. If he can do that at the beginning and the end of the season, just imagine what the team could be. And being that we've lost Dansby Swanson, and being that and Freddie Freeman, in the past couple of years, it would be really nice to see the guy who got the deal done actually perform. We'll see what happens. We're, of course, going to keep an eye on it, but I certainly hope he can continue what he's done in spring training. If he just does that, I'll be happy. But, we'll see. Kevin Crispin says, I hope Eddie figures it out, but whatever happens, he sure was a stud when it counted most in 2021. I would agree with that. That being said, he is still signed with the Braves, so we want him to do what he did then one more time. Matthew says, Rosario finished last year terribly, and his career averages are below average. I'm not going to pick the guy apart. We know what he was battling last year, his eye problems. And look, a little eyesight issue in baseball when it comes to hitting the baseball is a big issue. It's not a little issue. It's a little issue for guys who, go to a 9-to-5 every day, but it's a big issue for a guy who's facing 100 miles an hour at the plate and it moves. And I think a lot of people don't register that. I think, we're starting to see Eddie kind of break out. I'm not saying that I have full-fledged faith in the guy, but I think I have enough in it to give him a chance and to prove, a lot of people wrong. But we'll see. Nicholas says, are you guys excited for Tom Glavine on Bally Sports? I'm excited for it. I like Glavine back when he was on it. I like when Smoltz, does games. Anybody like that has that kind of knowledge. It's not, necessarily Jeff Francoeur in terms of, humor and that kind of thing, but he does hold a lot of knowledge there, and, I think it's going to be a good thing in the booth. Let's see. Again, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Remember, Super Chats get you, first in line for comments, but, any comment you put, I'm going to try to read tonight. And again, please do me a favor, like the video. It really does help me out. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All that really does help the channel grow and develop, and I really would appreciate it. Bill Gates, does anyone know why Acuna wore number 42 instead of number 13 during the WBC? From what I know, from what I know on that is he had the chance to wear it because he can't wear it, in terms of, he can't wear it because it's retired all across Major League Baseball, so he had the opportunity to wear it, decided to wear it. I'm not sure if one of his teammates wore number 13, so maybe that was a reason he did it. But I know it was primarily because he could do it, and maybe that would tell you that he would do it if it was open to wear during the 162 season. Kites Curiosities, Justin Dean is quietly putting together a nice spring training, currently hitting .429 as a non-roster invitee. Appreciate that. Yeah, I noticed him earlier. I think he's got the most stolen bases, and he's got like a very limited amount of at-bats. So that's something to keep an eye on. If nothing else, he very well could be a Terrence Gore. He's obviously got some speed. I haven't had a chance to see him, but if he can perform, then yeah. But for right now, I don't think he'll make the opening day roster. I've had my eye on his stats. I haven't seen him play much, but the guy obviously has caught some attention. I've seen it on Twitter quite a bit as well. But yeah, Justin Dean is one to keep an eye out for. If he gets called up, in the middle of the season, then again, keep an eye on it. But we'll see. Michael Sheffield, I think that. Oh, okay. Y'all are having conversations in the chat. You're not even asking me questions. That's all right. I'm not mad at you. Chris Kaysen says, love some Tyler Redmond. Appreciate you. Love you too. Can't wait for season games to start. Yeah, me too. We're, of course, going to find a way to cover it, whether it's weekly podcasts like this, daily videos, probably a mixture of both. We are going to do that. So this is not just a spring training podcast. I think that's pretty obvious. We cover the Braves pretty much throughout the entire season into the postseason, and we do what we can to cover as much as we can. Yeah, Michael says, I will make 0 predictions for Ozuna, but I would love to see it. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't think we're in the business of predicting Marcell Ozuna anymore, right? It's about whether or not we know the talent's there. It's not a battle of can he do it. Yes, he can. It's a battle of can he focus, and that's up to him. And we'll, of course, follow it and see what happens. But, I don't. I would rather him make me, prove I would rather him do better than what I think he can. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping he gives me a pleasant surprise. And we'll see what he does. Maverick Sports asks a good question. Good to hear from you, Maverick. He says, who do you think, or what do you think AA will do at the trade deadline? Alex Anthopoulos is a guy who's been notorious for trade deadlines, and mainly due to the 2021 trade deadline where he locked down Jock Peterson, Jorge Soler, Eddie Rosario, Richard Rodriguez for almost nothing. We didn't lose anything huge in that trade. Ended up winning us a World Series. So what do I think he will do at this trade deadline? Well, I think there's a few positions that are possible. I think the shortstop position is one. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I like all the guys there. But when you look at our infield, if there's one spot in the infield that could use some improvement, it would be shortstop. Because they're not going to trade Matt Olson. They're not going to trade Ozzie Albies. They're certainly not going to trade Austin Riley. The one that is possible is the one where you have 2 prospects at, plus Orlando Arcia, Braden Shoemaker, and Vaughn Grissom included in that. It's not going to be catcher. That's pretty much locked down. If you could trade Marcell Ozuna, they would have already done it. In the outfield, you got 2 spots that are locked down in center field and right with Acuna and Harris. So maybe left field. But even then, I don't think you trade Rosario. He's on a 1-year deal. You might as well let him play. In your starting rotation, they could do a little bit there because not anybody that's starting now, not Fried, Wright, Strider, Morton. I wouldn't even say Dodd or Schuster, but you got Elder, you have Anderson, you have all these guys that were just competing, not to mention Soroka. You have a lot there. You have a lot of depth. Again, depth not a problem, but if you were going to trade anybody, I think it would either come from there. It's certainly not going to be your bullpen. So I think it would likely be from the starting rotation, or not even the starting rotation, those competing for the starting rotation. I didn't even mention Colby Allard. There's a lot there. And you can try to determine what you think the value there is and what they can get back. I don't know. I don't know what they would trade for. I think that's something that's got to be decided come, that time. We got to see some we have to see some games, and we don't know what this team's going to be yet. We don't know where the problems lie yet. We can assume Marcell Ozuna is going to hit below 200. We don't know, right? We don't know what he's going to do. We don't know where the problems lie. We don't know what injuries could pop up. We don't know. We don't know what depth we need. We know what depth we have, though, and that's primarily in the starting pitcher role. And if you don't believe me, where did they trade last time? They traded for a catcher with a catcher, and they traded from the starting rotation or one that was competing for the starting rotation in Kyle Muller. So if you don't believe me, just look there. That's where I would think the Braves would trade from because that's where their wealth is at the moment. The Braves don't have a ton of prospects, but where they do, it's primarily starting pitching, even down to the lower ranks in rookie ball. That is what I would think. But, I could be wrong. They may not do anything at the trade deadline. They may not need to. But if they do need to, I would think it's going to be from the starting rotation. Bill Gates, why didn't the Braves bring back Brian Jordan for pre- and post-game coverage? I liked his commentary and analysis. From what I know, a lot of people are talking about that. Paul Bird as well. Both of them left for personal reasons. I don't think it was the Braves' choice. I don't think they were fired. It was nothing like that. Wish them the best. I think Paul Bird very well could be back next year. Brian Jordan, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was a professional choice. Maybe he's got something else lined up. I know that he's looking to continue what he does with young baseball players, and that's great. That's all we can ask for. So appreciate what they've done. They've been doing it as long as I've been watching the Braves, I think, if not pretty much all of it. Hate to see that, they're not coming back, but, maybe one day. We'll see. Jake Hobby, who do you think opens the season as a fifth starter? Dodge, Schuster, Soroka, or one who is optioned to AAA? So I think it's definitely between Dodd and Schuster. I don't think Soroka is in the conversation anymore because he's so far behind. I mean, today he had his first appearance. He threw a little over an inning, and I'm not knocking him. I mean, it's just his first appearance. He's 3 weeks behind everybody. You give him a month, somebody gets hurt or somebody's not performing, maybe Soroka gets the call, but I don't think it's Soroka. I think it's Dylan Dodd or Jared Schuster. Now, between them, it's pretty tough. I mean, they've thrown the most innings out of anybody in spring training. That being said, they've thrown more than anybody. It's hard to pick and choose between the two. I'm actually pulling up their stats for you right now. It's a tough thing to look at. Or a tough thing to kind of pick apart because, again, they've thrown more than anybody, but their ERA and that kind of it's just very similar to each other. I'm trying to pull this up quick, guys. Sorry about that. Let's see. Here we go. Forgive me. There it is. So, yeah, Dylan Dodd has thrown more than anybody. He's got 13 innings. Jared Schuster's got 12 2/3. So that tells you how much they've thrown and how similar they are. And if you're asking me, if you're asking me who do I think's better between the two, Dylan Dodd has a .69 ERA. Jared Schuster has a .71. Dylan Dodd has 15 strikeouts. Jared Schuster has 16. So it's tough to choose between the two. The Braves, I think, we're kind of waiting for one of them to fail, maybe. Maybe one of them has faced stiffer competition. I don't have that readily in front of me. They both have one win. On paper, they're almost the same guy. So it's tough to make that choice. Maybe they play rock, paper, scissors in the clubhouse, before the fifth day. I don't know. But I definitely think it's between Dodd and Schuster. I don't think the Braves are just going to completely overlook that. I think they may leave Schuster in the minors to let him grow and develop because he's their first-round pick. Dodd's background's a little bit more spotty. They might kind of ride his wave right now because he's having more success now than he has in his career. But they're both 24 years old. I mean, they're just it's odd because, I mean, Dylan Dodd played for high A ball last year and averaged a 9 ERA. Now, limited appearances, but a 9 ERA. So it's tough to say. Maybe he found something. I don't know. But it's just very tough to say. You're talking about spring training stats, which are spotty as it is, if we're honest with each other. It's very difficult to kind of choose between those two. But, we'll see. It's a wait-and-see game. I'd love to give you an answer, but I will tell you that I think it's between Schuster and Dylan Dodd. Miguel says, I heard an interview by Alex Anthopoulos. He commented that Grissom and Shoemaker are going to share shortstop and second base. It doesn't make sense. I get all that, but also realize Braden Shoemaker is lacking offensively, whether or not his bat came to life in spring training or not. Vaughn Grissom is lacking defensively. The Braves got to get them reps. Maybe there's a trade brewing. Who knows? I mean, I hate to suggest something like that because it very well could not be, may not be true. But maybe something's going on that we're not meant to know about, right? It's got to come out later. I definitely think there's a plan there. Orlando is hitting pretty well. I don't know if you saw, but earlier he had a 3-run homer. I think that if anybody knows what they're doing, it's Alex Anthopoulos. I hate to say that I'm blindly trusting Alex Anthopoulos, but the record's proven. Plus, a lot of people get really worked up about like the early season. I don't. I get worked up about the postseason a little bit, but I don't think, like, the early season is kind of where you figure stuff out. Now, granted, with that, the Braves did get down 10.5 games to the Mets last year, so it's not like there's a time to waste, but it's also, that's kind of your first week or two, you're still figuring things out. You're planting your feet a little bit. So, we'll see. But in terms of sharing second base and shortstop, I think they want to get Shoemake at bats, and I think they want to get Grissom time at shortstop, right? He had time at second. They got to get him time at short. I think you'll probably see an uneven mix there. I think Shoemake would probably play more at second and Grissom more at short, and they kind of see which one gets better over time. I don't know, but that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of what we're looking for and watching and waiting for is that. But, we'll see. I heard the same interview. I don't get it either, but I'm not readily available to all the information like AA is. Guys, one more time, please remember, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything going on with the Atlanta Braves, and of course, right here at On Deck. Appreciate you guys tuning in, by the way, and don't forget also to check out the shop. QR code's right there, and would appreciate any support you can give me. Really would appreciate it. Trying to keep this channel afloat. Let's see. Jake Hobby, who of the remaining outfielders will be on the opening day roster? Well, since you asked, I think now's a good time. I'm going to go ahead and go through the opening day roster one more time. We actually covered that earlier, but I'm not mad at you because we have a good audience now. Let's see kind of where we are. So this is the opening day roster. Of course, it gets started with the roster cuts. So the roster cuts this week, the biggest surprises, Vaughn Grissom, Braden Shoemake. Outside of that, Eli White, Nick Anderson, and Jackson Stevens. They were all sent to AAA in one way, form, or another. With that, we kind of have an answer to where the roster is headed. Now, not everything in this will be correct, but we can try to predict the opening day roster. Now, when I say opening day, I don't necessarily mean the first day of the season. I mean the early part of the season. So it may be opening day, it may be 3 days after, right? So while I say that, let's take a look at the starting rotation. Here's what I mean, right? Max Fried, Kyle Wright, Spencer Strider, Charlie Morton, those guys are going to be on the roster. No doubt about it. No question about it. Those guys will be there. The fifth spot is a little interesting. The fifth spot we know will either be Dylan Dodd or Jared Schuster, at least according to everything we're being led to believe. That is what we kind of know right now. It will either be Dylan Dodd or Jared Schuster. We've talked about that extensively. A lot of that has changed. Of course, last week it was Bryce Elder and Ian Anderson getting optioned. That threw everybody for a loop. And then it became, the competition between these two guys. And, it's a competition that neither one has really won yet. It's hard to kind of pick a winner there. The Braves will have to pick who they want to roll with, and we'll, of course, monitor that as it goes. For position players, we pretty much knew where this was going from the beginning outside of a few positions. Obviously, at first base, Matt Olson. That's not a question there. Second base is Ozzie Albies. Good to see him healthy again. Shortstop was the interesting one. Orlando Arcia. Orlando was not the first guy that people thought were going to go. He would not have gotten the fan vote. That being said, he's perfectly suitable at shortstop. He was formerly the starting shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers. Those were playoff teams. It's not like they, weren't teams that were competing. They were playoff teams. He's a guy whose bat has also come to life. He's had a pretty good spring training, and he's the guy that they're rolling with. He's also got, what Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake don't have, and that's a wealth of major league experience, which I think is very overlooked in this conversation. But, of course, the Braves will keep an eye on all three of those guys. Orlando Arcia at the major league level and Braden Shoemake and Vaughn Grissom at the AAA level. Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake will compete at the AAA level, sharing shortstop time and second base time. That's what we know, but we'll, of course, monitor that. At third base, Austin Riley. Catchers are pretty much said and done. Sean Murphy, Travis d'Arnaud. That's not a question mark. Right field, Ronald Acuna Jr. He's headed back for the World Baseball Classic. In center, the Rookie of the Year, Michael Harris II. In left field, Eddie Rosario, also coming out of a pretty good WBC. And at DH, the guy who surprised everybody with a pretty good spring training, Marcell Ozuna. From there, let's go to the bullpen. This is what I think your bullpen will look like. Closing pitcher, Raisel Iglesias. I think that's said and done, at least for the early part of the season. We'll monitor, see how the bullpen has evolved. There's a lot of new faces in this pen. It's also not set in stone, but this is what I think the Braves will roll out on opening day based on what we know right now. Left-handed pitcher, A.J. Minter. Left-handed pitcher, Dylan Lee, who I think is actually a guy who could become a setup man in the 7th and 8th inning on a regular basis. Lucas Letge also there as a lefty. For your righties, Joe Jimenez, the Braves picked him up in the offseason. He's a guy who they're going to roll out with whether or not the spring training stats are favorable to him or not. And look, the spring training stats are also not indicative of who these guys are. Colin McHugh didn't necessarily have a great ERA in spring training, but he's also had like 4 innings pitched. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking at a spring training stat, it's not always telling the full story. Nick Anderson is another one that I think will actually be on the opening day roster. He was one of the guys cut this week. He was sent to AAA, but he does have options to play with. Jesse Chavez, a lot of people are going to scratch their heads at that one. Jesse Chavez, I think, actually belongs in this bullpen. He can give you long relief, which is something that another guy that got optioned, Jackson Stevens, can do. And because he got optioned and Jesse Chavez didn't, I'm rolling with Jesse Chavez. Not to mention he is the leader of the pen. That's been said by anybody that's close to the Braves. Mark Bowman, Dave O'Brien. They expect him to be there too. I think Jesse Chavez is there. Colin McHugh, I think, will be there, and Kirby Yates is going to round this one off. Kirby Yates is a guy who was signed in the hopes that he could perform in 2023, not even necessarily 2022. He was a 2023 project, and he has his chance to show if he belongs or not this year. So we'll see if he still got it. Hopefully he does. That is your 2023 predicted opening day roster. Again, guys, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications. It really does help us out. Now, moving on, let's talk about what other questions you guys have and check in with you. A lot of you guys have been, you guys are active in the chat. Really do appreciate it. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. It really does help us out. Let's see. Jake Hobby. Or I just answered that question. Kite's Curiosities. Almost forgot. Any more news of insight on getting Fried's deal done? Or have you guys covered that already tonight? So no insight on Fried. I haven't answered this tonight, by the way. Look, I think that's the most important deal that needs to be done. It's a deal that's more complicated than a lot of people are, want to think about. He's a West Coast kid. It's going to be tough to do. I think the Braves have almost waited too long. I don't know if a deal has been offered. That has never been reported. It surprises me if that's the case. If the Braves have waited this long, it would surprise me that they've waited this long. You're talking about the guy who won Game 6 of the World Series, who got you there, a big part of why you were there. He's the guy that took up the ace, I hate to say, he took up the spot of the ace when Mike Soroka got hurt. It would just really surprise me if the Braves have waited this long to offer him a deal. Now, they probably don't want to insult him, which is something that the Braves did with Freddie Freeman. They gave him a deal that was very low and wasn't really even worth noting as an actual offer. This is all supposed. But they probably don't want to do that. They want to give him a fair deal. But they also know he's very close to spring training. He's a free agent at spring training. He's very close to free agency. He's a free agent in 2025. And, at this point, if I'm Fried, if I'm honest with you guys, I love Atlanta. But if I'm Fried, I'm sitting here going, well, I might as well wait till spring training. Why wouldn't I? I'm sorry. I might as well wait for free agency. Why wouldn't I? I can have all the guys competing over me. You look at what some of these pitchers out there right now are making. Carlos Rodon had a spectacular deal. Max Fried is very much in that conversation. He could hedge quite the price. So I think, you know, it's going to be tough for the Braves to land him if he does just not want to stay. But that'll, of course, you know, be decided when it's decided. It hasn't been decided yet. I would love for a deal to get done. I'd love for Max Fried to be a career Brave. But for right now, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Ryan Baker, with the Braves having a hard time getting a good shortstop, do you think they should have signed Dansby 2 extra years, maybe 2 years, $70 million? All right, we've talked about Dansby, I think almost every day I've done this channel since he left, or since he hadn't been re-signed. So here's my thoughts on Dansby Swanson for one more time. Dansby made, I don't know the exact deal, but if I'm not mistaken, Dansby made either more than Freddie or right there on par with Freddie. The Braves, in my opinion, would have never given Dansby that much money. Now, could they have given him a better deal? Could they have given him what he's asked for? That's up for debate. I don't know. But I don't think Dansby was where they wanted to spend the cash. You know, especially when you look at what they got in the lineup, you know, on any given night, they have plenty. The defense is, of course, you know, a question. But Dansby also had a career year and a contract season. You know, if he had put up the numbers that he did last year, his entire career, then maybe, you know, we're having a different conversation here. But I don't blame the Braves in not giving them at least the money the Cubs did. And based on his spring training stats right now, it's something to keep, you know, it's something to realize. It's not fair to judge the Braves for not signing him, especially when that much money is handed out. And the Braves are this close to the luxury tax. So I want to keep this also in mind. A lot of people are talking about, Orlando Arcia not being a good shortstop. This relates to your question, Ryan. Arcia, through 11 games in spring training, and again, small sample size here, but Arcia has a 240 average, 367 on base. The guys had a pretty good spring training. Again, 240 batting average, 367 on base. That is better by a long shot than Bogarts, who had a 188 batting average, a 235 on base. Better than Correa. They both played 6 games, 214s, 267. And Swanson. Swanson has a .071 batting average and a 235 on base in one more game than Orlando Arcia in spring training. So here's my thoughts on this. I'm not knocking Swanson. I think Swanson is a heck of a player. I think he'll be great in 2024. But it's unfair to say that the Braves just don't have a good shortstop. They have Orlando Arcia, who's a proven commodity. They have Vaughn Grissom, who has a ton of prospect potential. They have Braden Shoemake, who has just as much, maybe not quite as much, but has prospect potential. They have good shortstops. They may not have an all-star right now, but they have a guy that is going to fit well with Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, Michael Harris, Ronald Acuna, Eddie Rosario, and Sean Murphy and Travis d'Arnaud, and throw in Marcell Ozuna. They have a guy that's going to fill the gap, right? You're not always going to replace, Freddie Freeman with Matt Olson. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you have to, mold it. What they didn't get in Dansby Swanson, they got back in Sean Murphy. That was the adjustment. Now, it may not have been what you wanted. I, for one, liked William Contreras. I thought Contreras had a very bright future ahead of him. I followed him all through the minors. I saw a huge development in him behind the plate in the past couple of seasons. I thought he did very well, but he's not Sean Murphy, right? So, again, you're talking about replacing Dansby Swanson with Dansby Swanson. That does not always happen. But they can do a lot in other areas. They, again, got Sean Murphy, and I don't think they're done. I mean, they have 2 shortstops right now / second baseman who could have some trade value. They have enough to where you could talk about that, in the future come the trade deadline. Alex Anthopoulos, we just talked about it, has, plenty of history of operating at the trade deadline. So we'll see what they do, but I don't think it's fair to say that they don't have a good shortstop. But I understand your question, But no, I don't think they would have kept. I don't think they should have kept Dansby because like I see your suggestion. The suggestion is that Dansby stays for an extra 2 years, and we let Vaughn Grissom grow in the minors. Vaughn Grissom is not 2 years away. Number one, and that would have caused a. Not to say this is a bad problem, but remember in 2019, Josh Donaldson, Austin Riley. Donaldson's the third baseman. They put Riley in left, but everybody knows he's the future third baseman. If you didn't know, then you should have known. He was the future third baseman. And then you get to the offseason, the Braves give Donaldson an offer that's nowhere near close to what he's getting from other teams. And we're sitting here asking why not. And then Austin Riley kind of proves us right later on. Again, not a bad problem to have, but you don't keep a guy on payroll just because. Right? Like, look, I like Dansby. I like him just fine. I've interviewed him. I think he's a great player, but I also am a realist. And you're not going to convince Dansby Swanson, who never got the deal that Acuna got, who, frankly, Ozzie got, who Austin Riley got last season, all these Matt Olson got. He never got a huge extension like that. You're never going to convince him to just stay for 2 extra years. He's waiting for free agency. That's what happened. It wasn't the Braves didn't want him. It was he didn't get the deal early enough. He didn't get locked in when he was young, and he had already proven what he could do, and now he could make the money for it. And that's what happened. So a lot of people are asking, couldn't we have kept him for another 2 years? Dansby Swanson was never going to trade what he got from the Cubs for a 2-year deal with the Braves. It just wasn't going to happen. So that's my thoughts on that. Leary, here's something that hasn't been talked about. How's the new play-by-play guy? From what I hear, pretty good. We'll see. Y'all know me. I'm a big Chip Carey fan. I will stick by that. He did a lot for me in terms of advice at one time when I was younger to kind of do what I'm doing now. I like him a lot. Happy he's going home to St. Louis and continuing his career there. But we'll see. Everybody deserves a chance. Y'all don't get on him too hard if the first few broadcasts don't go too well. Okay. Nicholas says. Michael says, don't forget Adrianza. Need a backup infielder. I think he sets in place of Nick Anderson to start. Yeah, they very well could do that. I think they would carry more pitching early in the season though, because these guys, some of these guys haven't thrown more than 3 or 4 innings in terms of starters. That's why I felt like they put Anderson in the bullpen first. I think they'd carry more bullpen guys than they would infielders. But I definitely think Adrianza could impact late in the season if he doesn't opt out and go somewhere else, because that is a possibility. I would love Adrianza to be able to be off the bench. We've seen what he can do in years past for us. I think that would be a great addition, and I think we'll have to see. Miguel Frica says Alex Anthopoulos is play of the game. How come Pilar makes the team? Choosing 230 average over Grissom, that is not fair. He didn't choose the best 26 players. Chavez over Nick Anderson, Pilar over, Vaughn Grissom. So here's the deal. Vaughn Grissom and Pilar are two very different, they're in different positions. One of them's off the bench, one of them is a starting rotation. The difference here is this. Vaughn Grissom is going to go down to AAA, and he's going to play every day, which a lot of people are going to overlook. The fact that he's playing every day, it says a lot. And same for Shoemake. If they're playing every day, they can adapt, they can hone their skills. If they come up and they're not hitting and they're put on the bench, then what good are they doing? What good is that doing for them, right? So I don't think that them going down to the minors is a bad thing. And a lot of people, like Kevin Pilar, it's not the best 26 players, but it's the best available players in their position. And I don't think there's an argument for Vaughn Grissom over, well, there is the argument. The argument is not Vaughn Grissom over Orlando Arcia. The argument is Vaughn Grissom over Pilar, the argument is not Vaughn Grissom over Kevin Pilar. The argument would be Orlando Arcia over Vaughn Grissom. Now, that argument is this. Vaughn Grissom is younger. He has a higher ceiling, But right now, the best guy for the job, and I've thought this all throughout spring training that this was a possibility, is Orlando Arcia. He's got the time at the majors. He's got, he can be a stopgap. He can help kind of give time to raise Vaughn to where they need him to be. But you can't deny that there is legit concerns with Vaughn Grissom. There is, defensively. This is last year. The video you're looking at is last year. He's working with Ron Washington, which he did much over this offseason because they were concerned about his defense. Guys, I went to spring training. I saw 2 or 3 games, and I think he had a couple of errors, okay? I saw it firsthand. There is legit concern. He doesn't look smooth. He doesn't look comfortable necessarily. Now, that can change, but he's got to be given time to do that, and I think it can be. I think it's, look, I would love for him to be able to work with Ron Washington all year in AAA, but that doesn't always happen. So you're looking at this. This has been a question for quite a while. It was overlooked last season because Ozzie got hurt, and then Shoemake also got hurt. It got overlooked, but it can't be overlooked anymore because this is a guy that we have to put our faith into for the future. And I don't think a lot of people are looking at it quite that deep. This isn't just the guy that we're going with for this season. This is the guy that we got to have ready if we're going to have the dynasty that the Braves, are trying to have. This is the guy that's got to carry him there at the shortstop position. He's got to be what, not even what Dance was. He might have to be better. So I think he's going to fit in well at some point during the season. I think Vaughn Grissom will play the majority of this season at shortstop, if I'm honest with you. But I didn't think he was ready on opening day, and they're grooming him to be that. We're going to wrap this up here in just a minute. So just go ahead and get whatever you want in. Just remember, Super Chats get you priority, and I got to wrap it up soon because I have somewhere to be. But again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for checking out the channel. I really do appreciate it. Great audience tonight. Great chat tonight. On your way out, do me this favor, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck. Also, remember to check out the shop at that QR code. It's got all different kinds of things with the On Deck logo. Really would appreciate the support. Also, on the channel homepage, I just want to remind you, there is a Mike Soroka interview from last week at spring training about his condition, talking to him about everything going on there. Also, there are 3 interviews with prospects. These guys are going to be the future of the Braves. You got Owen Murphy, who's a first-round pick, 20th overall. J.R. Ritchie, who is a first-round pick, 35th overall. Also got his name called at the draft by Fred McGriff, so it's a great story there. And, of course, Cole Phillips. So if you don't know who Cole Phillips is, if you follow this channel, you will. We've done 3 interviews with him so far. Plan to do more in the future throughout the minor league career he has, and eventually, hopefully, into the majors. But that is on the channel right now. Really appreciate you guys going to check that out. And any of the videos on the channel homepage, I have a whole library out there. Go check them out. There's a Michael Harris interview from a few weeks ago out there. Would love for you guys to check it out. And we got more in the future. I interviewed Darryl Strawberry yesterday. That'll be on the channel soon. Don't know when exactly. Hopefully later this week. But just keep an eye out for that. And, of course, keep an eye out for content pretty much all season long. And to do that, subscribe. That is the best thing you can do. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. All you got to do is press the button below. And, of course, hit the notification bell as well. We're going to answer 2 more questions, and then I'm getting out of here. Bo Hunter says, honestly, I thought you were crazy when you suggested weeks ago that Grissom could very well start the season in AAA. I didn't see anybody else calling that. Hats off to you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for giving me the credit. Nobody ever does that. They just listen to me, and then they complain about it 2 weeks later. I appreciate that. Nicholas says, compared to Arcia, Dansby is flashy. I never said Dansby's flashy. I said he's smooth. I do think he's smooth, and that's something that Grissom lacks currently. The Battery, Carlisle Rude, says, what are the actual ramifications of sending Grissom down contractually? Had he been on the roster opening day, would the Braves have lost a year of control? A lot of people said that, but and look, I'm kind of ignorant to that if I'm honest with you, but I'm giving you just the fan perspective for a second. This is kind of how I view that. He played last year. So for me, I don't see how that's even a conversation. Now for Shoemake, that may be a conversation. But I also think in the new CBA, they got rid of that. that whole thing, because you could just keep a guy down for a month and then have another year of control. That happened to Chris Bryant. That happened to Acuna. Happened to a lot of the big stars. And, Major League Baseball and the Players Association came to that agreement. That's the last I heard about this. So a lot of people have suggested that this is so the Braves could have another year of control. I don't think that's the case. No media has said that, and I'm not talking about Braves media. I'm talking about MLB media. Mark Bowman has not said that. Dave O'Brien has not said that. And I haven't seen it. And again, I'm ignorant to that. I've done research on it, trying to find where in the CBA it said that. I can't find anything. So if y'all find something, please let me know. Send me the link. I'd be glad to check it out. So that being said, thank you, Bo Hunter. Thank you to everybody else in the chat. Really do appreciate you being active tonight. One last time, thank you for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. And, of course, we'll see you next time right here at On Deck. Thanks for watching, guys.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support. Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.